News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KBNU.
KBNU News Time is 4:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by U&I Furniture. A 67-year-old Providence chiropractor has confessed to sexually groping 3 patients several years ago. Neil Lewis Erickson accepted a plea deal after being arrested more than a year ago. Erickson was in First District Court for a pretrial conference Monday morning. He accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to 4 amended counts of sexual battery, a Class A misdemeanor. Each charge carries a possible sentence of up to 1 year in jail. According to prosecutors, 2 female adults contacted the Cache County Sheriff's Office in October 2021. They explained how Erickson inappropriately touched them during chiropractic exams. In April 2022, a 3rd woman contacted the sheriff's office reporting Erickson inappropriately touched her several times during clinical visits. During Monday's court appearance, defense attorney Tawny Bugden said as part of the plea agreement, one of the sexual battery charges will be held in abeyance for 18 months. If Erickson does not commit any further crimes, the charge could be dismissed. Judge Spencer Walsh ordered Erickson to complete a pre-sentence report with the Cache County Sheriff's deputies about his criminal history. Sentencing was scheduled for May 8th. KBNU News Time is 4:06. KBNU weather for tonight. Slight chance of snow this evening. Snow likely after midnight. Accumulation around 1 inch. Overnight low tonight 15 to 20. Snow likely Wednesday morning. A chance of snow in the afternoon with about an inch accumulation during the day tomorrow. High around 30. Partly cloudy is the forecast on Thursday and mid-20s for the high. It's been to 33. Right now it's 29 at KBNU. KBNU weather brought to you by Mount Logan Laundry, located at 1st East, 7th South in Brigham City, and also 500 East, 900 North in Logan, the cleanest spot in town.
Most people who buy from U&I Furniture are repeat customers. They come back again and again. So it's important to U&I to sell furniture with value and quality. And U&I loves what they do. They support local manufacturers and American-made brands. U&I's line of Southern Motion specializes in reclining furniture. Best Brand Furniture offers more petite styles. And U&I just added Klosner, who has a wide range of options and takes lots of special orders. It's a family-owned 4th-generation furniture store where value and quality is and always has been offered. That's why it's always a better buy at U&I Furniture, downtown Logan.
KBNU News Time is 4:07. A man already on probation for assaulting a former girlfriend and leaving her with a chipped tooth is now accused of violently assaulting his current girlfriend and leaving her with a cut wound that went to the bone, according to prosecutors. 27-year-old Paul Aaron Stewart was charged in 4th District Court Monday with 3 counts of aggravated assault, 2 second-degree felonies, and a third-degree felony, intoxication, and disorderly conduct. Last Wednesday, Stewart asked his girlfriend to go out and get him some food. According to charging documents, when she returned, she noticed that his level of impairment had substantially increased. The woman told police she does not know why Stewart was upset, and when she began asking questions, he punched her in the face with a closed fist, according to the charges. The victim stated that Stewart grabbed a butcher knife from the kitchen and approached the victim, lunging at her but missing her upper body. The victim reported that Stewart made a slashing motion with the knife, striking the victim's knee with the knife and cutting the knee open to show the bone. The noise from the struggle prompted a neighbor to knock on the door, at which time Stewart left the residence, according to the charges. And federal aviation officials on Monday announced they are sending $29 million to Salt Lake City International Airport as the airport plans to add 16 new gates to Concourse B in the next few years. It is one of 99 airport terminal projects that will get funds from this year's round of the Airport Terminal Program set up by the FAA via the 2021 bipartisan infrastructure law. The bill set aside $1 billion in funds for the program every year from fiscal year 2022 through the 2026 fiscal year. No Utah airports received program funding last year. KVNU News Time is 4:10. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Local talk. Afternoons at 4 with For the People.
Welcome to the new year and happy winter driving. As the weather outside gets colder, it's more important than ever to have a reliable vehicle to get you around safely. That's where Murdoch Volkswagen comes in with the Drive at Home sales event. Right now, receive 3.9% for 3 years on Volkswagen's award-winning SUV lineup. When you walk through our doors, you feel like family. At Murdoch Volkswagen in Logan or online at murdochvw.com.
Call 866-628-3065 or see dealer for complete details. Offer expires 2/28/23.
We start each new year filled with hope and prosperity for things to come. At Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology, it's no different. Dr. Daines is so grateful to get to call Cache Valley home and continue to offer his services to the wonderful people that live in our beautiful valley. He wants to help you start your new year off right by improving your hearing, which over the course of time will help improve your quality of life. Give them a call at 435-753-4327 or 753-HERE to schedule an appointment, or you can visit them online at CacheValleyHearing.com.
The United States Deputy Sheriff's Association is a national nonprofit and the largest non-governmental provider of services to law enforcement. The USDSA assists city, county, state, and federal agencies with free safety equipment donations and officer survival training, along with cash donations to families of law enforcement officers who perish in the line of duty, college scholarships for the children of law enforcement, a citizen awareness program, and more. For more information on the USDSA and how you can help, visit usdeputy.org.
For the People.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cache Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have two guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It's a nice, wintry last day of February.
I looked outside this morning and I told my wife, it's blustery out there. There's no better word to describe it than blustery.
Blustery.
Because the wind, it was trying to snow, it was snowing lightly, and the wind was driving it, and it did not look like February 28th.
You know, there was some footage shared, a video that was shared by a trail groomer at Deer Valley last night. A video taken from the inside of one of those cabs of the trail groomer machines, and man, was it ugly. It was really, really just... It looked like the kind of condition. Now, of course, if you know Deer Valley and its location, this person's not far from civilization or people that could come and help, but still looked like the kind of scene from a movie that you wouldn't live through. It was just really, really, really nasty. Second day in a row of, I hope everyone's enjoying the snow removal. 2 days in a row of,
It's just, every day. And I don't know, in my neighborhood, it's almost like, people were doing it, but you could almost like hear some sighs like, oh. I mean, people, after a storm that we haven't had a storm for a while, people are kind of excited about it. But after the winter we've been having, the excitement's kind of gone out of it.
Yeah, it's it gets old, and I just keep reminding myself. Well, two things I keep saying to myself: I probably won't have to do this very many more times, and also we need the water. The drought conditions will continue into another year. As experts have told us again and again, it'll take a few years to actually recover from the last few years of drought. Well, technically, Utah has been in about a 22-year cycle of drought, meaning that for about 22 years, the amount of water has been steadily decreasing. And that hit really the hardest the last couple of years, of course. And it's so dry. Most of this, it goes towards how dry the ground is after multiple years of extreme drought. No matter how wet this winter is, it won't be enough to recover fully from the drought. 2 or 3 winters like this, then we could. But it's still, we're still going to be talking a lot about water and a lot about possibly even water restrictions. And of course, one of the big concerns is that all of this snow will melt off really fast. 2 ways that would be super ugly would be, of course, the floods that would occur if all of this snow melted really fast. And then second thing is we're back into dire straits of water situations by June or July if it melts too fast. So
I would say this at the very least: the rivers, Logan River, Blacksmith Fork River, Bear River, they are all going to be running pretty full.
Yeah,
this spring.
It's going to be
and early summer.
There are already, along those lines, there are already preparations being made. We'll find out more tomorrow. David Zook, Cache County Executive, will be in for our County Hour monthly episode here on the show. And we'll find out what the county's doing. But I know cities are already prepping a little bit for potential flood season. Logan City Mayor Holly Danes last week told us that they're actually talking about that, trying to decide when is the right time to start maybe prepping a little bit for helping people with potential floods that could happen. Logan City in the past, of course, has filled entire warehouses with pre-prepared sandbags that residents could come by and pick up or even volunteer to help fill. And they're talking about, maybe doing something like that again, anticipating heavy floods. Now, it may not manifest. If things play out the way they should, the snow will melt very slowly. But as Bill mentioned, be prepared for dangerous rivers throughout the spring. With this much snow, you're going to see river conditions. And, of course, that means, there are a lot of trails, popular trails now throughout Cache Valley that, people frequent with their dogs. A few of them, even off-leash trails in the canyons and things like that. I know my dogs absolutely love splashing in the river when they can. It may not be a great idea as things warm until June or even July, because there's going to be a lot of water coming down one way or another. So things to prep for. But yeah, records being set as far as snowpack at ski resorts throughout Utah. Also, just in general, the many places at 200% of normal for this time of year. Here in northern Utah, on average, we're between 150 and 200% of normal in many locations. And avalanche danger does continue. In fact, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but the Utah Avalanche Center has changed the watch to a warning for avalanche conditions out there. And you can see it if you're even slightly familiar with what goes into an avalanche warning or watch. It has a lot to do with the amount of snow, how much moisture there is in the snow, previous storms and what they've looked like. Have you had nights of freezing followed by days of warming, alternating, things like that? We've had all of those conditions. So the potential for an avalanche is very high, even on low foothills. And some of those foothills do have enough snow to put you and your life and limb in danger. So you definitely want to keep an eye on that as you're out there in the outback. If you're a snowshoer, a snowmobiler, a cross-country skier, if avalanche conditions are very, very high out there. In fact, Utah Avalanche Center says they expect a high number of naturally occurring avalanches due just to the weight of the most recent storms last night and the night before, and possibly a bit more for tomorrow. Smaller, a bit more for tomorrow. Well, fingers crossed. I think the forecast was 1 to 3 inches, and I think I was snow blowing about 8 this morning again early. So, and it was still coming down while I was doing that. So, all right. We'll get things underway here. Bill, my messenger is not working. I assume we have our guest on the line.
We have Jeff.
Oh, Jeff.
Would like to weigh in.
Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. When I was a Boy Scout, our scout master was a very nice guy, married, had kids. They were playing by a river one time in Racine, Wisconsin. It was frozen. Their dog went out and broke through the ice. The 3-year-old boy went out chasing the dog and broke through the ice.
Oh, wow.
The father went out and broke through the ice. All 3 bodies were found about 50 yards downstream.
Oh, man, tragic.
Okay. The point is, keep off the damn ice this time of year.
Yeah.
Right?
Good advice. Good advice, Jeff. Always good to hear from you. Jeff, one of my favorite callers. And that is, I'm glad he mentioned that because I'd forgotten to throw that in. But that's another concern right now. With, in a lot of places, the ice is very thick. We did have that stretch of super cold weather there, but that was a month ago. Things have warmed and frozen again and warmed and frozen again. There was a tragedy here in Utah just either last week or the week before. A 14-year-old boy slipped through the ice, and has not been found yet, as I understand it. And Jeff's story there, you can avoid those tragedies pretty easily by just not risking it. It's not a risk worth taking. And also, if you are ice fishing at reservoirs, Hiram Reservoir, I know there's a lot that goes on at a few reservoirs south of here as well. Check conditions, before you head out, because it's been pretty variable weather-wise, and so things can change very quickly. All right. Thanks to Jeff for that. To others, if you'd like to join us, 753-5868. We're going to continue with programming as planned, but we're hoping, and this will all depend on what happens in the Utah House right now, we're hoping to get a final week legislative update from Representative Dan Johnson. That will all depend on whether or not he can break free from the schedule. They are debating bills on the House floor right now. This week is known as Vote-A-Rama, meaning that it's an important week for House representatives to be on the floor, not in an office on the phone with me. So that, of course, takes priority. But if he's able to get some time away, he'll be providing a legislative update for us here in hour 1 of today's show. Micah Combs, we last spoke to him talking about Mount Logan Middle School kids putting on, and I ended up seeing this. It was actually a pretty good production of Oklahoma. Well, they've made a big announcement on what their show next year will be, and Micah also has some news on another favorite here in northern Utah for theater goers. The Old Barn Theater has some announcements as well. So Micah will be joining us later on in the hour. Your headlines with smooth jazz. Keeping the temperature cool while bringing you the news right after this.
Now that the holidays are over, are you feeling the need to declutter and get that stale, closed-up smell out of your home? You should have your air ducts cleaned by the Duct Hunter. The dust that accumulates over time can appear as surface dust and can cause your home to smell musty and dusty. Call the Duct Hunter at 770-4813.
We are the Duct Hunter. Breathe better, save money, protect your home. We are the Duct Hunter. This is how we do every day. We be grinding, and if you wanna come and text us,
if you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music.
Ah, this is Mommy's jam.
Then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it twice a day.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it in the morning and before dinner.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it, and share it with my doctor. nearly 1 in 2 U.S. adults have high blood pressure. That's why it's important to self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. It starts with a monitor.
Now that I know my blood pressure numbers, I talked with my doctor. We're getting those numbers down.
Be next to talk to your doctor about your blood pressure numbers. Get down with your blood pressure. Self-monitoring is power. Learn more at manageyourbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association. In partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Instead of Dave Ramsey, right after the show tonight, you'll have an opportunity to hear Governor Cox. It's his I never know really how to promote these because they happen somewhat on the regular, but not regular enough to...
Sometimes a little irregular.
Yeah, it's roughly every 3 months. About every 90 days, Governor Cox hosts one of these.
Somewhere, yeah, between 60 and 90.
Yeah. So we've had the opportunity to host them here as well, and it's always fun to do. But it's called Direct Link with Governor Cox. It is a statewide event, but it is for the rural areas. This was Governor Cox's response to something he'd always found irritating, and I had as well. There was a tradition here in Utah. It still happens, this monthly event called Speak to the Governor. But it always happens in Salt Lake. And Salt Lake media, obviously being right there, they drive the conversation and ask the questions. And it ends up being, more urban-related issues that come up. So Governor Cox wanted to spread himself out a little more and get to the rural areas and give more of a voice to concerns and questions from rural Utah. So, as Bill said, roughly every 60 to 90 days, Governor Cox hosts a Direct Link event. It moves throughout the state, but it's always a rural media organization in a rural part of Utah. There is a toll-free number they'll announce at the start of the hour that you can call in and ask a question of the governor live. And that starts at 6 o'clock tonight. We will be broadcasting it here on KVNU, 6 to 7 p.m. Direct Link with Governor Spencer Cox. And again, the toll-free number, they'll announce that right at the start of the show. I can't find it here to tell everyone. So, all right. It is time for our daily contribution to cooling the temperature down, while at the same time bringing you the news. It's your headlines with smooth jazz. This day in history, 1784. This day in history, John Wesley chartered the Methodist Church. In 1883, on this day, the first ever vaudeville theater opened. It was actually controversial, too. People gasped at the irreverence and the ankle-bearing that was happening on the stage. Vaudeville, of course, took off like gangbusters and became a predominant form of entertainment for nearly 100 years. In at least some parts of the world. I did not know it was this long ago. Bill, you might have known this, being a TV news history buff. But on this day in 1940, the first ever televised basketball game happened. Now, I'm not sure if that was... The NBA didn't exist in 1940, right?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I'm not quite sure about that.
I think the NBA came after that. So this was just a game. It was 1940, February 28th, first ever televised full basketball game. And people were enamored by this, the idea of just being able to watch this game from somewhere else in the world. And here's one I know you remember, Bill. In fact, I remember it barely. And I remember there was a lot of sadness around this, but on this day in 1983, the final episode of MASH aired.
Yeah.
That big finale.
And I missed it because
I didn't get to see it.
Well, I've seen it since, but I didn't get to see it with everybody else because I was working actually. So and there was not a television handy. So I did see it in reruns, and when they showed it again a few times over the years.
I remember there with my parents watching that last episode, and it just being super quiet in the room for that full episode. And then, of course, they tried to launch the MASH spin-off, which was just embarrassingly awkward for everybody. Yeah, after MASH. Did not take off, but...
let's see, it was who was in that? It was...
some of the main characters. Jamie
Potter.
Yeah,
Potter. Harry Morgan.
Trapper, the guy that played Trapper, was in it. BJ.
BJ, was he in it?
Oh, yeah, he was in it.
All I know, it wasn't... Yeah, it didn't last very long.
Didn't last long, and probably for the best. Famous birthdays today. In 1906, Bugsy Siegel, famous mobster, or infamous, I guess, was born. Tommy Tune, famous, not infamous, dancer, born in 1939 on this day. Mario Andretti, for race car fans, born in 1940 on this day. Bernadette Peters, famous actress, born in, I didn't know she was this old, 1948. Bernadette Peters was born on this day. And NBA basketball player Tyshawn Prince.
Was she married at one time to Steve Martin? Bernadette Peters?
If she wasn't, I know they were a couple for a while.
Yeah.
That's the reason I know that. That was one of my first ever bits of Hollywood gossip that I remember learning in my life. Bernadette Peters, one of her best roles that no one really remembers was with Andy Kaufman in Heartbeeps. They play robots. It was an 80s film. It's been, for some reason, memory hold, even though there's nothing cancelable about it. It's a pretty innocuous, friendly film. But they're all robots. And it's actually one of my favorites. So those are your This Day in History headlines. Moving through the news here on your Headlines and Smooth Jazz. Unprecedented is the word being used for a Utah bill unveiled by Senator Dan McKay, a guy who just can't seem to keep himself out of controversial headlines. McKay introduced the bill. This is what should have at least one of your eyebrows up immediately. McKay introduced the bill in a committee meeting yesterday, saying, first, before describing the bill, "You all know my reputation for working through things. Please have faith in me and support this bill." That's an introduction to a bill that, it's a dumb introduction. It's a good way to get the rest of the committee going, no. McKay does not have a reputation for that. In fact, he's still kind of persona non grata in the legislature for a sneaky move in a legislative session 2 years ago after the entire session was spent trying to find a compromise between conservatives who wanted to see a ban on transgender kids participating in youth sports here in Utah. The compromise was instead they would set up some sort of a commission where they could review case by case, district by district. In the final hours of the legislative session, McKay swapped that bill out, surprising even Senate leadership, who was not happy, none of them were, with an outright ban on transgender kids playing in youth sports. The first victim of the bill was a 13-year-old transgender girl who had had a dream of being a swimmer. She was forced to quit the swim team. After the bill passed, it was vetoed by the governor. Veto was overridden by the legislature, but McKay never yet has lived down that reputation of surprising everyone with the swap with 2 hours to go in the session. McKay wanting everyone to forget that and back this bill. What does the bill do? Why is it becoming unprecedented? Senate Bill 295 would basically allow developers to create their own quasi-government districts. The pitch, McKay and several representatives of developers, Ivory Homes and others, is that it would allow a group of landowners to get together, and if there's 100% agreement, they could enter into borrowing that is traditionally something only a city or county government can do, borrowing at a lower rate. McKay said this would fast-track development and would function much like an HOA, not a new city or township. The problem is Well, the bill would give these, as he describes them, HOAs, powers similar to a city or a township, including powers to excise taxes, property taxes, and others. It is most likely unconstitutional, but what's noteworthy about this, the Deseret News points out, is that it was written by developers. And the League of Cities and Towns said they are very disappointed that Senator McKay brought the bill forward without speaking with stakeholders and how this could throw a wrench in every bit of housing planning that cities and counties are already doing. Don't expect this bill to go too far, but it's still noteworthy that it was sponsored. Final headline here. Utah content creator. If you're a TikTok user or know someone younger who is, you may have heard of the Mormon mom of TikTok. Taylor Frankie Paul is her name, and she got pretty famous for a TikTok channel talking about life in Utah, life raising her 2 young children. She was charged, documents reveal, with felony counts of domestic violence and aggravated assault in Salt Lake County this week. The charges stem from a report of domestic violence dating February 17th, when Paul's boyfriend called Harriman police to say that Paul had been hitting him with things in the presence of her 2 children. The man had been trying to leave the residence during an argument, and she wouldn't let him. During the altercation, Paul, 28 years old, TikTok star, threw her phone, a wooden playset at the man, damaged his vehicle, and destroyed some of the kids' toys. Video of the altercation obtained by police indicates Paul threw a heavy metal chair at the man, put a hole in the wall, and was kicking him when police arrived, and even put him in a chokehold before they could pull her off. The man told Paul to stop throwing chairs because her 5-year-old daughter was next to him on the couch. Her response, she threw another chair and actually hit the kid in the head, footage indicates. The girl is heard crying. Obviously, Paul's TikTok content creator career at this point is over, but many fans are disappointed. Paul was known for being a family-friendly TikTok channel, again highlighting the funnier parts of life raising children in Utah. As the Mormon mom of TikTok, it looks like Paul will now be known, allegedly, as, a person charged with domestic violence and potentially felony child abuse. Full story in the Salt Lake Tribune if you'd like to read it. Those are your headlines and smooth jazz.
Oh, and you mentioned the NBA. I looked it up. The NBA began life as the Basketball Association of America in 1946 and played under that moniker for 3 years before in 1949 they merged with the National Basketball League and changed names to the NBA. So, the nice. NBA was not around technically in 1940. Well, it wasn't around at all, yeah,
but just
1940.
A few years later they were, huh?
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, 1940, on this day, the first ever televised basketball game happened, and as Bill just filled us in there, a few years later, the NBA was a thing. Probably related, to be honest with you. Seeing the popularity of the televised game, people probably thought, there's some money to be made here. Those are your headlines in smooth jazz. Now, the local headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KBNU News Time is 4:38. News brought to you by Napa Auto Parts. Despite relatively flat fiscal projections released late last week, Governor Spencer Cox is still expecting to receive a record-busting budget from lawmakers when the general session of the legislature ends at midnight on Friday. The final budget for fiscal year 2023 is expected to be $28 billion, about $400 million off the governor's budget request released in early December. Recent polling by the Hinckley Institute of Politics revealed that about 20% of Utahns ranked an income tax cut as their top budget priority. Cox had asked for more than $1 billion in tax relief in both one-time and ongoing funds. Lawmakers rejected the governor's call for a one-time tax rebates, however, and will likely deliver about $400 million in tax relief by dropping the state's income tax rate from 4.85% to 4.65%. We'll get more of the governor's comments on the legislature and other issues as we present the first direct link with Utah Governor Spencer Cox tonight on KBNU from the Utah Broadcasters Association. First one of the year, I should mention, for 2023. So listen for that beginning at 6:06 tonight here on KBNU. The pilot of a medical transport plane that crashed during a winter storm in Nevada followed in the footsteps of his grandfather, who flew bombers in World War II. All 5 people aboard the flight died. A brother of 46-year-old Scott Walton of Allendale, Michigan, says he always had an affinity for aviation. Michael Walton says his older brother was in his 30s when he began training to become a full-time pilot after working in marketing for many years. A spokesman for the NTSB said Monday that it'll take 2 to 3 weeks to complete a preliminary investigation into the cause of the crash. Investigators say the single-engine Pilatus PC-12 apparently broke apart Friday night before hitting the ground about 40 miles southeast of Reno. It was on its way to Salt Lake City. And former Utah Jazz coach Quinn Snyder will make his Atlanta debut as the new coach for the Hawks tonight when they play at home against Washington. They're hoping the Hawks, currently 8th in the Eastern Conference, can finish the regular season strong and earn a playoff spot as one of the East's top 6 teams. KBNU News Time is 4:41.
Help your car do better in the cold weather with these items from your locally owned Napa Auto Parts. Save up to $19 a pair on silicone wiper blades from Trico and Rain-X. Diesel additives from Howes, Power Service, Schaefer's, and Stanadyne are all in stock. Get a $20 rebate on Napa Legend and Napa AAA batteries. Night vision headlights, 50% off. Great parts, great service at your 5 locally owned Preston to Providence Napa Auto Parts.
KBNU weather tonight, slight chance of snow this evening. Snow likely after midnight, mostly cloudy skies, accumulation around 1 inch. Snow likely Wednesday morning, chance of snow in the afternoon, maybe another inch accumulation during the day tomorrow. High temperature around 30 degrees. Partly cloudy skies Thursday and mid-20s for the high. It's been to 33. Right now it's 30 at KBNU. KBNU weather brought to you by Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Bring back the sounds you've been missing. Schedule a free hearing evaluation with Dr. Paul Danes at Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com. Let's check Wall Street now with Edward Jones.
This is Cheryl, bringing you the daily financial market report on behalf of financial advisor Jeff Olson and Edward Jones. Markets move lower as February comes to an end. Markets were mostly lower on Tuesday after a modest bounce on Monday. This comes after 3 straight weeks of losses in the S&P 500, leaving year-to-date returns to about 3.5% after being up as much as 8% earlier in the year. Markets remain torn between better economic data on one hand and a repricing of additional Fed rate hikes this year on the other, which would make the economy generally more successful to downside risks. On Tuesday, U.S. Treasury yields were flat, with the 10-year yield around 3.9% and the 2-year yield around 4.8%, both still near highs for the year thus far. The recent upward move in yields has continued to put downward pressure on both bond markets and equity markets in recent weeks. Edward Jones would expect yields to continue to move modestly higher in the weeks ahead, but they should stabilize as the Federal Reserve comes closer to the end of its rate hiking campaign. The Dow closed down 232 points at 32,657. The Nasdaq closed down 11 points at 11,456. The S&P 500 closed down 12 points at 3,970. And in the bond market, 10-year Treasury yields are trading at 3.92%. This has been today's financial market report, brought to you on behalf of Edward Jones, member SIPC, and financial advisor Jeff Olson, serving individual investors with personalized attention and financial advice at 580 North Main in Logan. If you would like additional information, please contact our branch office at 435-787-8170. Daily commentary is also located on our website at edwardjones.com.
Own a small business or a farm? You thought about solar? Listen up. A new USDA grant was announced allocating $300 million for farmers and small business owners to put in solar. That's right. The government will help you get solar installed, covering 40% of the cost. And don't forget, as a business, you can save up to 50 or 60% more with federal and state tax credits. Second Sun Solar will install your system and help with the USDA paperwork. Call Second Sun Solar today at 435-363-9917 or online at utahsolardirect.com.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. As Bill mentioned during the news there, you'll have a chance to speak with Governor Cox tonight on our airwaves. Direct link with Governor Cox starts at 6 o'clock and runs until 7. And I apologize. I've written it down before. I can't find my notes. I can't find it online anywhere. There is an 800 number to call. It's different than ours because this is a statewide event. It takes place for and in rural Utah, and it moves throughout the state. They wanted to keep things equitable between, local radio stations and media groups. So it moves throughout the state. And who is it again tonight hosting, Bill? I've forgotten. Anyway, someone south of us in a rural area.
I'll have it for you here in a second. It is Robert Lovell.
Okay.
With Mid-Utah Radio.
Okay. So the central Utah area this time. That's nice. This is it's a really cool thing the governor does because the questions are so different than the monthly Speak to the Governor event, which are usually, almost always attended by Salt Lake media. Understandably, they're right there. But oftentimes the rural issues sort of don't come up. So Governor wanted to change that. So he launched this direct link event. We've had the opportunity to host it here in our studios multiple times over, and it's always fun to do. But there is an 800 number. It is live. Calls are slightly screened, basically to make sure it's not someone calling to harass or shout profanity. Other than that, any question is fair game. Although, again, the focus is on rural Utah. So there are occasionally calls from the Wasatch Front, Salt Lake County area, but most of the conversation is going to be focused on areas like Box Elder, Cache, Rich County, the southern part of the state, eastern and western parts of the state, and central Utah, where things kind of start to disband from that Utah County area into further south, more rural townships and cities. It's a unique opportunity. It's even if you don't have a question, it's worth hearing. Definitely. Some things I expect will come up tonight. The governor taking some heat for rural Utah. It's not his fault. He has kind of said he wouldn't have done it, but there was no point in vetoing it. It would have just wasted everybody's time and started a fight that he wouldn't win because the legislature had already told him they had the votes to override his veto. But he wasn't a huge fan, he said, of the process. I was disappointed with it as well. I have had a chance to speak with a couple of our Cache Valley representatives who have criticized for not being more vocal if they were disappointed with the process. Not a peep as they ram through a school voucher program in the second week of the legislative session. Just a really, really horrible thing to do. Not the school voucher program itself. If you're a school voucher fan, maybe you're glad they did. I'm talking about the process. They knew exactly what they were doing. They attached the school voucher program to a very popular teacher salary increase bill, basically hijacking that issue to ram through a pet political issue for some Utah County lawmakers. And school vouchers have never been popular in Utah because 85% of the state is still rural. You know, school voucher programs don't do a lot for rural areas. They just take money from the existing public schools and funnel them back into concentrated population centers like Salt Lake and Utah County. So vouchers have never been popular in Utah, and that's always been the thorn in the side of a handful of Utah County lawmakers who really want them to be a thing in Utah. So they found a way, and they rammed it through, and it was an ugly process, and not a peep from our representatives on this. I was so disappointed by that. But I've spoken with a couple of them, and they said that, they weren't excited about it, I think is what I was told. They weren't huge fans of how that went about. Either way, expect that to come up tonight because Governor Cox ran on and has touted himself since elected and reelected as a champion of rural Utah. And yet, here's this thing that dominated the first few days of the legislative session that actually is a cost to rural Utah. So he'll probably field some questions on that tonight. No doubt there will be questions on water and water planning. There was a bit of a dust-up at the Senate today as Senate President Stuart Adams, who has never met a slush fund he couldn't fall in love with as long as it was going to the right people. He's suggesting a Bear River Development slush fund again, and people are saying, well, doesn't that fly in the face of the whole Save the Great Salt Lake plan? And he had to kind of back down and say, well, yeah, it does. People are nervous watching this legislature. Transparency has taken some hits. They've shown a willingness to leave accountability out of things. At least this current iteration of legislative leadership, Brad Wilson and Stuart Adams. And so people are nervous in rural areas. And so this is an important one to hear tonight. Again, Governor Cox's Direct Link event will begin here tonight on KVNU at 6 p.m. It'll be broadcast throughout rural Utah in partnership with the Utah Broadcasters Association. And I appreciate them making this happen every time. Coordinating it more for the broadcast. And again, there will be announced right at the start and repeated throughout. There will be a toll-free number to call to ask your questions. I just want to remind all of our listeners, it is not our same studio line. The 753-5868 or the 1-800-369-5868, those are not the numbers you would dial for the Direct Link event tonight. They will have a different toll-free number that they'll announce right as the show begins at 6, and you'll hear it repeated throughout. So another quick announcement to make here. Again, we were hoping that schedule would allow for an update on the legislative session from Representative Dan Johnson. Unfortunately, it looks like the House is attempting to do something called clear the board. That means that the Senate has communicated to the House they're a little upset with them. They're a little frustrated with them. And man, I should not look at Twitter when I'm talking. Senator John Johnson just digging his hole deeper. Anyway, we talked about that enough this week. And his ban the diversity at college campuses bill is dead. So, but he just does not know when to quit. Just digging himself in a hole online here today. Whew. Eventually, this is going to be tough for the Huntsman School business to shake off, and I don't know why he doesn't realize that and keep his mouth a little more closed, but here he is. Anyway, so there's always someone in elected office that self-selects to be that guy, and apparently he's decided it's him this month. Either way, another announcement here related to college campuses, but only through location. We have an announcement on the official graduation commencement dates, which will take place at Utah State University. This is the main campus here in Logan, of course, for those listening elsewhere. And the commencement for USU, Utah State University is preparing for what will be the 136th commencement since its founding as a land-grant institution of education in 1888. And also on top of that, they're planning May 4th for their own commencement ceremonies, but they're hosting all of the other campuses first. April 20th, the school will hold 7 ceremonies across campuses in the state through the end of the month. It starts April 20th and goes till the 29th. Starting Thursday, April 20th, with at USU Southwest, Beaver High School graduation. April 21st in Brigham City at the Brigham City USU campus, the Box Elder High School commencement ceremony at 6 p.m. Saturday, April 22nd, USU Tooele will host the Tooele High School graduation commencement ceremony at 11 a.m. USU Moab on the 27th of April will host the ceremony for Hoodoo Moab at 6 p.m. USU Blanding, San Juan High School, USU Eastern, Brummel and Demetric Center at the Brummel and Demetric Center. We'll have several high schools there. And then USU Uinta Basin will host Roosevelt Junior High. Very cool that they're able to do this. So again, here in northern Utah, April 20th, Bear River High School, the USU Southwest campus, and Friday, April 21st, USU Brigham City campus, Box Elder High School's commencement ceremony at 6 p.m. So those local ceremonies, again, begin the 20th of April and run until the 29th at various USU campuses throughout the state in their local area. Very cool that USU is doing that this year. If you want to see a full schedule, Craig Hislop has the story, and it's posted now to CacheValleyDaily.com, and we'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
Most people who buy from UNI Furniture are repeat customers. They come back again and again. So it's important to UNI to sell furniture with value and quality. And UNI loves what they do. They support local manufacturers and American-made brands. UNI's line of Southern Motion specializes in reclining furniture. Best Brand Furniture offers more petite styles. And UNI just added Klosner, who has a wide range of options and takes lots of special orders. It's a family-owned 4th-generation furniture store where value and quality is and always has been offered. That's why it's always a better buy at UNI Furniture, downtown Logan.
Papa, why can't we telegraph while riding a horse? Son, there ain't no one to blame but Jeffro. He was riding old Betsy the Stallion, tip-tapping away at his telegraph, when blam! Ran right into the side of the saloon. Well, if Jeffro can't do it, neither should you. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News, a recap of how the Supreme Court entertained arguments about the student loan debt cancellation plan. Plus, how did students' debt become such a crisis? Also, for inflation to come down, companies will have to stop raising prices, but not many seem eager to do it. Hear what they're saying. And why car insurance premiums continue to get so expensive. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Just a couple of minutes left in hour 2. And again, we'd hope to get an update from Representative Dan Johnson. He's the one lawmaker we have yet to speak with during the session. We did speak to him just a couple of weeks before the session. He gave us a preview. We've had a chance during the session now to speak with Representative Casey Snyder, Representative Mike Peterson, and Senator Chris Wilson. So we're hoping Representative Dan Johnson will be able to join us today. The Senate House leadership had a different plan for him, though. Vote-a-rama taking place right now. They're trying to clear the board, which means the Senate has gotten mad at the House for taking so long on Senate bills. So the House, trying to keep themselves from retaliation on the part of the Senate, this has happened before. This is how petty things can get up there. If the House drags its feet on Senate bills, then the Senate will start doing the same, and they'll intentionally kill House bills by letting the clock run out up until Friday at midnight because the House didn't prioritize Senate bills enough. And this has also happened in reverse, the House punishing the Senate for not prioritizing House bills enough, in their opinion. That's what's taking place right now. So the House, trying to stay in good faith or good grace with the Senate to avoid retaliation tomorrow or the next day, is trying to clear the board of Senate bills. So vote-a-rama happening, and Representative Johnson was unable to break away. But he will hopefully be able to join us later on this week. If not, we'll do a post-session recap with him. He's the guy on education bills, and there are some big bills on education still moving through the process right now. Hour 2 of our show kicks off with our good friend Micah Combs. We're going to be talking about Mount Logan Middle School's big announcement on next year's production, and also what's